We've seen in the course of this debate some very high points and some points that I think in some ways we regretted. One of the high points for me was the return of Senator McCain, and I want to join all of my colleagues in saying how heartfelt our gratitude is for his return and his eloquence here about the need for us to work together. And yet, yesterday we also saw, in my view, a shameful and disgraceful mockery of our democracy when senators proceeded, in effect, to a slogan, a shell of a bill, not a really substantive measure. And yet that shell will itself undermine the exchanges and insurance coverage for millions and millions of America by creating uncertainty. And this process itself will aggravate that fear. I've now held 5 hearings, field hearings in Connecticut, and at each one I've heard from countless people with tears in their eyes telling me what the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid have meant to them and what repeal of it will mean to them, and how devastating and cataclysmic the damage will be. Thousands of constituents have written, have called, have also contacted others of my colleagues, as I have urged them to do, and I just want to say how grateful I am to them for their continued activism and advocacy, and we need to maintain this fight. I've heard from moms and dads about what would happen to their children. One saying to me, we can't thrive as a nation or as individuals if we can't afford to be healthy. And so I want to ask my colleagues to listen to their constituents, to the people in their states, like Connor and Mackenzie and Amelie and Evan and Amanda and Michelle and Jennifer and Gay. I've described them on the floor in my previous talks. These voices and faces need to be brought here because there have been no hearings, no regular order, no democratic process, as we have an obligation to do. And if my colleagues abandon at some point this effort to repeal and decimate the Affordable Care Act, I stand ready to come across the aisle, to work together, to drive down the costs of health care, particularly pharmaceutical drugs, to open the exchanges to more competition and create more choices for consumers among insurance companies. There are steps we can take together to improve this process. As Senator McCain urged us so powerfully, we need to go back to the regular order, come together, and work across the aisle. There is no panacea. There's no instant solution. But we need to work together. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator from Wisconsin.